I'm Trevor Stevenson, and welcome to Your Story Will Be Different. This is a narrative play podcast where I tell you the story that came to be from a playthrough of a solo tabletop role-playing game. For this session, we're playing Outliers by Samantha Lee, in which you are a research assistant just trying to do your job in an absurd environment. It's a single-player journaling game where a bad day on the job is worse than any day you have ever experienced. With that said, let's dive right in. Okay, I think that's on. God, I can't remember the last time I saw a tape recorder. All right, next up is Voice Print Anomaly Surveillance System, or VAS. Okay, well, here we go. So my job now is to record into this device. It's my first day on the job, but here we go. So I was absolutely ready for this first day. I mean, I'm fresh out of college, shouldering some nightmare-inducing student debt and running on dreams and caffeine. I saw the research assistant position and it seemed straightforward enough. And during the interview and the online reviews for the IRB by former employees were flawless. But within a few hours of my first day here, I realized that something was off. The principal investigator, everyone calls it a PI, communicated only through cryptic voicemails, and the equipment made unsettling organic noises when nobody was looking. By mid-afternoon, I was tasked with my first real responsibility: collecting behavioral data. I set up a camera to record a participant's facial expressions during a questionnaire. Everything appeared normal at first. On the small screen on the camera, I saw the participant's face was animated as they answered the questions about sleep patterns and dietary habits. But later, when I reviewed the footage, I could feel my stomach drop. The participant's face was gone. Just a blank, featureless expanse of skin. The only thing visible was a faint, glitching grin that flickered, kind of like static. You know, I found myself like blinking at it. I rewound the video and checked it again and again with the same result. First day and I'm already hallucinating. So I flipped through the lab's orientation manual. It's a thick, worn out tome titled "For Problems That Shouldn't Exist." I skimmed past sections like temporal distortions and what to do if your reflection attacks. I found the most relevant page I could: facial data anomalies. The solution was listed as locate the camera's resident anomaly. You have to convince it to return the data, offer incentives if necessary, avoid making promises you can't keep. So I found the camera in the equipment closet where I'd put it. When I approached, the lens was glinting ominously at me. Maybe triumphantly? I took a deep breath and whispered, "Okay, whoever or whatever is in there, I need that face data back. Can we negotiate?" And then the camera's servos whirred, and then the static buzz deepened. I heard a voice. It was distorted like a corrupted audio file, and it replied, "Lunch break. Every Friday." Fine. You can have Friday lunches off. Just give me the footage. Watching the playback, the static smile vanished and the participant's face reappeared on the screen. I exhaled in relief. Perfect. See you Friday, I guess. This is the first Tuesday that I've been working here. I don't know why they're making me dictate what day of the week it is. So Today was supposed to be a little bit more routine, or at least that's what I told myself. My task was simple: prepare the EEG cap to record brain activity for a new participant. I'd read all the documentation and checked the equipment twice, but as soon as I secured the cap on the participant's head, something went horribly wrong. The material of the cap began to bubble like it was molten plastic. Before I could react, it fused seamlessly with the participant's scalp, transforming into a smooth, organic-looking helmet. The participant didn't seem fazed at all, though. In fact, he beamed at me, his eyes shining with delight.
"Thanks for the new hat. It's so comfortable."
My mouth was literally agape. I mean, this couldn't be real. That's not supposed to happen. I immediately pulled out my phone and drafted an urgent email to the IRB, trying to sound like a professional, but how do you write spontaneous cap skin fusion observed, participant unharmed but unnervingly enthusiastic, requesting protocol amendment? Their response was surprisingly fast. The email contained cryptic instructions adorned with strange symbols. Recommendation: incorporate protective sigils to prevent further transmutations. Avoid using material sourced from fourth plane. I remember sighing super heavily. I mean, now I had to learn about sigils. What? Fourth plane? Was fourth plane a vendor of some kind? Now, I'm beginning to think I'd accidentally joined a paranormal research facility. Still, I followed their advice, double-checked the equipment supplier, and added the phrase "no arcane contamination" to my checklist. By the end of the day, I was beginning to think this job would never be normal. The participant waved cheerfully as he left, completely oblivious to my panic. At least one of us is having a good time. Okay, this is my first Wednesday. When I arrived at the lab today, I was assigned to a seemingly mundane task: schedule a virtual meeting with the lab's collaborators. I figured this would be a break from the usual weirdness. Oh, I was wrong. The first email reply I received was from a Dr. Vega, who stated, "I'm only available after the Monday blood moon." I was thinking it might be some kind of metaphor or incredibly inappropriate innuendo. But the next reply didn't offer much clarity. "I'm free during the hour of doubt." It was from Dr. Sinclair. Great. And the final response came from Dr. Blackwell. "Let me know after Yurvernoth rises from their great slumber." What the hell is a Yurvernoth? I pulled out my phone to Google it, and the search results were weird, ancient legends, lunar calendars, and cryptic Reddit forums hinted at an otherworldly entity that slept between the fabric of time itself. I remember I pinched the bridge of my nose. Maybe this is some kind of elaborate prank or hazing, but the deadline for scheduling was getting closer. After cross-referencing lunar phases and occult time frames, I concluded that the hour of doubt roughly translated to 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I scheduled the meeting for that time and sent out an invitation with a terse note: "Meeting scheduled for Tuesday at 3 a.m. Please confirm." And if anyone complained, they could take it up with Yurvernoth. To my surprise, all three collaborators confirmed almost immediately. I leaned back in my chair and shook my head. I was already dreading that early morning meeting. This job's gonna kill me. My first Thursday on the job. I mean, it seemed simple enough. But today I was supposed to cut a small lock of hair from a participant to test their cortisol levels. I'd done similar procedures during my internship, and I knew I had this in the bag. But as soon as I snipped the hair, things went off the rails. The strands that I had cut wiggled like tiny living snakes. Before I could grab them, they slithered between my fingers and scattered across the floor. I shrieked so loud. You've got to be kidding me. So the participant was seated calmly in their chair. They tilted their head back, and she asked,
"Is that supposed to happen?"
"Oh, totally," I lied. Crouching on the floor, I was trying to gather the runaway hairs. I reached for a particularly fast one, only for it to dart under the lab bench. Yeah, no, that's completely normal. Happens all the time, especially just before lunch. So I grabbed a dustpan, made several futile attempts to sweep up the strands. They slipped away and mocked my every effort. After a few minutes of chasing them around the lab, I decided to change tactics. I rummaged through the supply closet and found a jar of sugar cubes. Holding one out like bait, I whispered, "Come on, you little bastards, get some monosaccharide." To my surprise, the hairs hesitated and slowly slithered towards the sugar cube. I lured them into a jar and quickly sealed it. The participant watched the entire scene with wild amusement. She said,
"Well, that was interesting."
"You have no idea." I placed the jar on the counter. As I noted in the incident log, I wondered if the IRB had a protocol for self-animated biological samples. Probably not. You know what? I'm going to put that in my performance review. My first Friday of my first week began like any other. So I was reviewing the schedule and prepping materials for the next participant. The script was pretty simple. All I had to do was guide the participant through a test and read aloud the instructions from my binder. But when I glanced down at the page, I saw that the text had changed. Instead of the standard instructions, it was filled with unfamiliar sigils spelling out archaic phrases. Before I could fully process it, my mouth moved on autopilot. I read aloud, "By the 13 eyes of the abyss, I invoke thee." The room immediately darkened and an eerie chill spread across my skin. My heart was pounding in my chest. The participant blinked and looked around, was clearly unsettled. Did you just summon something?" "Probably," I admitted. I flipped through the pages frantically, but the rest of the script was the same, full of incomprehensible incantations. The participant shifted nervously in his seat. "Should I be worried?" No, this is normal. It happens all the time." I lied. I'm getting pretty good at that. I closed the binder and decided to improvise the rest of the instructions. The participant followed along hesitantly, glancing over his shoulder every few minutes as if expecting a spectral presence to appear. Once the task was completed, I quickly documented it in my incident log. Note to self, don't trust the script. I'd have to find a way to prevent the binder from rewriting itself. Maybe salt circles weren't as superstitious as they sounded. Thank you, Vernoth. It's Friday. My second Monday was supposed to be a straightforward day, as always. The participant finished filling out their questionnaire while I organized files. When they handed me the completed form back, I gave it a quick glance to ensure everything was filled out, and that's when I noticed one question had been left blank. I pointed it out and flipped the paper around so they could see it. The participant leaned forward and frowned.
"Oh yeah, I saw that. I'm not really sure how to answer it."
I looked at the question again and it read, "What is the true nature of your reality?" I wasn't sure how I would respond. Well, I can't blame you for that. It's a bit existential. She laughed along.
Yeah, I'm not really in the mood for an identity crisis today.
Understandable, I replied and made a note in the margin of the form. Question omitted due to philosophical ambiguity. As the participant left the room, I pondered the question myself. What was the true nature of reality? In this lab, reality seemed to be more flexible than I'd like. I placed the questionnaire in the filing cabinet. I'm not going down that rabbit hole right now. My second Tuesday on the job, well, I was in the middle of checking voicemail messages when the machine emitted a burst of static that made the hair on my arm stand on end. I pressed play again, but instead of a voice, there was only a deep crackling noise that seemed to pulse in time with the rhythm of my heartbeat. Then I felt it. There was a presence, as if the message wasn't on the tape, but inside of me. The words formed in my mind.
Participant interest confirmed. Return call within 3 days or face dimensional collapse.
I clutched the edge of the desk for support. Okay, that's new. I considered ignoring it, but something deep within me, an ancient fear of the unknown most likely, urged me to take it seriously. I picked up the phone and dialed the number listed on the message. The line rang once before connecting.
Thank you for returning the call. You have ensured the stability of this dimension. We'll be in touch.
The line went dead. I slowly set the phone down. Had I just prevented something? I made a note in the log. Voicemail anomaly resolved. Possible dimensional threat averted. I'm definitely putting that in my review. My second Wednesday on the job was data entry. It was usually a mindless task and a breath of relaxing mundanity, but today the universe had other plans. As I wrote the participant's subject ID at the top of a screening form, the characters rearranged themselves before my eyes. Study 001 became Your Life 002 in an instant. I stared at the paper, and slowly I erased the altered ID and wrote it again. The letters trembled and then reshuffled into something even stranger. Flee while you can. Oh, come on. You're just a piece of paper. Stop being dramatic. I tried again, this time pressing the pencil harder than necessary. The ID held steady for a moment before flickering like a glitched screen. Remember, I groaned and grabbed a nearby ruler and tapped it against the desk like a teacher disciplining a mischievous student. Stay still. The letters quivered, but finally stopped moving. I quickly finished filling out the form. As long as the data remained stable long enough for submission, I could deal with the paperwork later. Once the task was done, I leaned back in my chair and shook my head. This lab needs an exorcist. The morning of my second Thursday started with me sifting through the latest batch of data. I collected brain activity readings from a handful of participants, and now it was time to see if any meaningful patterns emerged. I found that really rewarding. As I plugged in the numbers and ran the data analysis, a peculiar correlation jumped out at me. Participants that claimed to be from alternate dimensions consistently guessed the numbers I was thinking. At first, I assumed it was an error on my part. Maybe I had coded something wrong. I reran the analysis twice, but the results didn't change. It was undeniable. Somehow participants with interdimensional origins were eerily accurate at predicting my thoughts. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. What am I supposed to do with this? The implications were both fascinating and deeply unsettling. If other dimensions influence cognition, this could be groundbreaking or career-ending, depending upon who you told. I jotted down notes and flagged the findings for further review. Maybe the PI would have an idea, though I doubted their cryptic messages would provide much clarity at all. For now, I decided to frame the discovery as a possible grant opportunity. Dimensional cognitive phenomenon, I scribbled on my notepad. As I saved the data, I caught a glimpse of the participant IDs again. One of them flickered briefly, displaying a word, listen. I grabbed an eraser, gave it a stern look, and it changed back. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the numbers weren't the only things trying to communicate with me. I was settling into my desk on my second Friday when I felt a strange sensation on my arm, like an itch that had turned into a light scratch. I rolled up my sleeve to find an unfamiliar message tattooed there in sharp, elegant script. Would like to join study? Call me. My first instinct was to panic. I rubbed at the words with water and alcohol, maybe thinking they were some kind of ink transfer, but they didn't smudge. They were embedded in my skin as though they had always been there. Fantastic. I glanced around to see if anyone had noticed. The lab was empty, save for the faint hum of machinery. I sighed and grabbed my phone and dialed the number scrawled beneath the message. The line connected instantly. Hello?
You've received my request. Excellent. I'm very eager to participate in your research. When can I come in?
Who exactly are you?
Names are unimportant. What matters is that I possess insights your study could greatly benefit from. I will see you soon.
The call ended. I stared at the phone for a moment and then down at the tattoo. Slowly, the message faded, leaving my skin unmarked once more. I made a note in the log. Mystery participant confirmed. Possible supernatural involvement. I looked down at where his message had been and wondered if this guy takes requests for tattoos. It's my third Monday now, and when I saw myself walk into the lab, I froze. My doppelganger strolled in confidently, wearing an identical outfit and carrying the same clipboard I had set down moments earlier. He smiled at me, a knowing, almost playful grin that sent a shiver down my spine. Morning? What the hell? Who? What are you? He didn't answer. Instead, he sauntered over to the desk, signed the consent form with my name, and handed it back to me. The signature was identical down to the slight curve on the T. You're doing great, sweetie. Okay, this is officially too much. Relax. I'm not here to hurt you. Just think of me as a preview of what's to come. A preview of what? I asked, but he was already fading and his form dissolving like mist. Within seconds, he was gone. I stood there for a moment, trying to catch my breath and figure out what I had just seen. I added a new line to the incident report, encountered doppelganger, potential time loop or alternate self. Further investigation required. Whatever was happening in this lab, it was escalating. Seeing myself was shocking, disturbing, and rattled my own sense of self. But man, my hair looked great. On my 12th day on the job, I'm happy to report that recruitment has been surprisingly successful. The enrollment log showed dozens of new participants, far more than I remember signing up. I flipped through the pages, growing increasingly uneasy. Half of the names were unfamiliar, and notes claimed they had been enrolled through Dreamtime encounters. That wasn't exactly a standard recruitment method. I cross-checked the entries with the digital records, hoping for some rational explanation. Instead, I found an encrypted folder labeled Ethereal Outreach. My password didn't work. When I tried to force access, the computer screen flickered ominously. The lights of the lab dimmed for a moment, and I heard a faint whisper,
"We remember you."
The lights returned to normal, but the whispers lingered in my ear like an echo. I shut the laptop and let out a shaky exhale. Nope, not dealing with this before lunch. I filed the log under unexplained phenomena and decided to move on with my day. I'm not even sure what day of the week it is anymore. But I had done it about 36 times. Clean a set of electrodes with disinfectant solution and leave them to dry. I grabbed a toothbrush and carefully scrubbed away any residue before dropping the electrodes into the solution. Everything seemed normal until I returned 20 minutes later. The electrodes weren't where I left them. Instead, they were swimming around the solution like tadpoles and their wires wiggling in rhythmic pulses. I was still gaping at this as I watched several of them begin to sprout small insect-like legs. Come on. I grabbed a pair of tongs and attempted to fish one out. The electrode's newly formed legs latched onto my tongs and it emitted a high-pitched chirping sound. I froze in place, somewhere between terror and fascination. It was almost as if it was communicating? Okay. Stay calm. I wasn't sure if I was talking to myself or the creature in the tongs at that point. I carefully placed the electrode on a tray and watched it scuttle around like a confused crab. The rest of the electrodes continued their metamorphosis in the disinfectant bath. Some were now sporting tiny wings. I sent an urgent message to the PI. Subject, electrode anomaly. Potential biomechanical evolution observed, requesting immediate guidance. PI's response was brief and cryptic.
Document the final form.
I sighed and grabbed my phone to record the scene. This lab's version of routine was starting to redefine the term. I think it's time to start sending out my resume again. Scheduling conflicts were the bane of my existence. Today was particularly on brand. A participant had limited availability, and the only open slot was on a Tuesday, except every Tuesday on the lab calendar was marked as booked with no further details. I attempted to overwrite the entry, only for the calendar to emit a low hiss. The parchment-like surface bubbled ominously as if warning me to back off. The hell is your problem? It didn't respond, of course, but the bubbling intensified. Fine. What do you want? A voice emerged. It was low and guttural and whispered from the depth of the parchment. Sacrifice? Like what kind of sacrifice? The calendar offered no suggestions, but I had a feeling it didn't mean anything too dire. I rummaged through my desk and pulled out my favorite coffee mug, a gift from my college days. It wasn't much, but sentimental value had to count for something. I placed my mug on the calendar. The bubbling ceased instantly, and the Tuesday slot opened up. But my mug cracked in half. I shook my head in disbelief. This place is a nightmare, and it's super petty. It's day 15, and the finance department sent me a curt email this morning demanding justification for a recent purchase. 12 porcelain clown dolls. I couldn't believe it. I didn't even remember ordering them. But sure enough, a box labeled lab supplies was sitting in the corner of the room. I cautiously opened it, revealing rows of grinning clown dolls with wide, glassy eyes. Their painted smiles were unsettlingly lifelike. Why would anyone need these? I rifled through the desk and found a package slip with my name on it. No notes, no instructions. I sighed and opened a new email to the finance department. Subject, research purpose for clown dolls. Clown dolls are necessary for measuring fear responses in participants. They serve as a controlled stimulus to gauge psychological reactions to unsettling imagery. It wasn't a complete lie. The dolls were certainly unsettling enough, and as I hit send, I heard a faint giggle. I froze and glanced at the box. The dolls stared back. None of them moved. I remember pointing at the box and saying, "One of you moves, I'm quitting on the spot." This is my last entry. The day has finally come. The lab's funding has run out, and I received the official layoff notice and an email titled Project Closure Notification. I sat at my desk, staring at the message. Part of me was relieved. No more eldritch whispers or sentient electrodes or doppelgangers with amazing hair. But as I packed my things today, I felt a wave of unexpected sadness hit me. For all its nightmares, this place had been unique. I'd survived situations I could have never imagined or described to another human being, and somehow that felt like an accomplishment, even if I couldn't verbalize my experiences enough to update my CV. As I turn off the lights and finish this recording, a new job offer just hit my phone. It reads, "Assistant needed for paranormal research." Maybe. I'm definitely qualified. I absolutely enjoyed every minute of playing this game. The tone just really vibed with me from the start. Maybe it's because, like many of us, I have a 9-to-5 job to pay the bills, and I have to put up with a lot of things while doing said job. And that kind of comes through in the prompts and tone for the game itself. They're doing something passionate with the career that they're doing, but at the same time, you just got to get through it to the end of the day and to the weekend. Outliers is a wretched and alone game as well. And for those of you that don't know what it means, it's based on a system for a game called The Wretched, where you have a block tower. The copyright version is a Jenga tower. Each time you're making a decision or an event is happening, you are pulling from that tower. If the tower falls, generally it's something catastrophic. In this case, because this is a research lab, that tower represents the funding for the research that your laboratory is doing. I'm not going to brag too much, but I did a pretty great job of keeping that funding going to a very long amount of time. I was getting close to running out of prompts. The game itself is played with a deck of cards, which indicate the different things that happen while you're doing your research, what happens on a specific day while you're doing it. And the block tower is what indicates the funding. When the funding is gone, then the game is over. And you can take an opportunity to look back at all the things that had happened to you. There is definitely that irreverence to the entire thing. In typical fashion, I reacted to it in my default persona, the smartass. So I greatly enjoyed the game itself. And if you're stuck in that kind of Office Space mentality and want to throw in some eldritch horror hijinks, I feel like you should definitely check out this game for yourself. Thank you again for listening to Your Story Will Be Different. If you're not already subscribed to this, mad props for going fast and loose listening to your podcast. But if you want to make sure that you are up to date with the most current episodes and are notified when we're coming back for season 3, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. For our next session, we're going to be playing Sentinel, in which you are the last line of defense for a mystical location. As always, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to Outliers by Samantha Lee. Be sure to check it out for yourself and let me know via social media how your day-to-day humdrum life deals with eldritch horrors and bizarre encounters. But just remember, your story will be different.